Speaking of Donald Trump, my next guest here on the program, the senior writer at the website thefederalist.com, Robert Tracinski, has written a piece for The Federalist yesterday titled Rick Perry, Trump's First Victim. Robert, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hi there. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming on today to talk about Rick Perry and Donald Trump. And you think that Rick Perry is out of this race because of Donald Trump?
Well, it was certainly a contributing factor. I don't want to, it's a politician's job to marshal his own base of support, but it's also clear that Perry was one of the people hurt worst by Trump's entrance into the race. Somebody looked at the poll numbers in this and basically calculated that when Trump entered the race, Jeb Bush, the big establishment candidate, lost about 10% of his support. It was Perry and Ted Cruz, who lost about nearly half their support to Trump. So, I think that's sort of the irony is that a lot of people are backing Trump because they want to, poke a finger in the eye of the establishment. But it's not the establishment candidate they really hurt. It was all the other anti-establishment candidates who got hurt. Because Cruz is a guy who's, known for making trouble in the Senate and not going along with the leadership there and, being something of a radical. And Perry's a guy who's, spent his whole career outside the Beltway down in Texas. So the idea is that the irony is he hit the anti-establishment candidates worse. And then in addition to taking away some of their supporters, Trump sort of sucked all the media oxygen out for the last couple of months. I mean, anybody who's in the media sort of sees this, that it's all Trump all the time. It's all his reality TV show. Basically, since the first Republican debate, it's been his reality TV show 24/7. And I think we just saw an example in the last week. Like, the only way that one of these smaller candidates can get any media is by getting into a fight with Donald Trump. Carly Fiorina did this, I think, in a very smart way, where he made some comment about her face and how she was too ugly to be elected or something like that.
Right.
And she did put out this video about how she's proud of every line and wrinkle on her face and all the things that she's done, in the years that she's been alive. That's the only way to get media for a candidate who's under 10% is to become part of Donald Trump's story in a way that hopefully makes him look bad and makes you look good. But it's a testament to the way he's dominated the media. And anybody who's got 2% or 5%, they can't even get the attention that they would need to build themselves up to a larger following.
Well, is it? We're visiting with Robert Tracinski from The Federalist, senior writer at thefederalist.com. Great website, by the way, there at The Federalist, one of the sites I check out every day. Is it smart for these candidates to go after Trump, or should they just wait it out? Or are we in a place right now where there is no waiting out Donald Trump? It's just time to attack.
Well, I think it kind of every candidate has to make their own decision on this. I think the interesting news that just came out, a new CBS New York Times poll, I think it is, just came out today, showing that Trump has sort of leveled out at around 27%, and Ben Carson's now at 23%, just on his heels, which I find very interesting because the three candidates who have been growing in the polls are Trump, Carson, and Carly Fiorina, the three people who have never held elected office before.
Right.
I think it's a real testament to how much the Republican base is kind of sick and tired and wants to protest against the establishment and wants a political outsider. But it's very interesting. These are three very different kind of candidates. And Carson's interesting, the way he's coming up on Trump. Is interesting because he is such a contrast in personal style, where Trump is all sort of, abrasive and braggadocio and, always talking about himself and boasting about himself and putting down other people. Carson's more the mild-mannered, humble guy who, has a pleasant and likable personality as opposed to an abrasive and combative one. So I think it's interesting that, to that contrast, that he's doing so well with that contrast, and could potentially be, threatening Trump's front-runner status. I also think that might be an indication that sort of Trump media has peaked at this point, that his momentum may not be taking him beyond somewhere in the high 20s in terms of the percentage of voters who are for him. It could be the time at which, I think people sort of have absorbed the Trump phenomenon are now ready to start looking at other people.
If Ben Carson, and this is probably hard to predict, but let's just say Ben Carson had gotten half the media coverage that Donald Trump has gotten, do you think Ben Carson would be leading this race right now? Because it seems like to me this is not really the summer of Trump. It's the summer of the outsiders. And it's just the news media that is focused on only Donald Trump, which has actually helped him gain in the polls above Carson.
He has the media soft spot. I mean, basically, he is the candidate for the reality TV era. I think in a way, I'm not a Trump fan, so I think in a way he's the price we pay for the sort of trivialization of the media and the culture by reality TV and that sort of thing. The way that, the people, you can only get attention by focusing on people insulting each other and people putting each other down, and that, the sort of nastiness that often is part of these reality TV shows, where it's all about these very petty personal conflicts and picking which personality you back among these people engaged in petty personal conflict. Where I think Ben Carson has a more positive appeal, and I'm hoping that if he comes up on Trump, he will get more attention. But I also have to say, I think my focus is let's find the anti-establishment candidate who has a real political record, somebody we can look at and say we know how they're going to make decisions, we know how they're going to vote. It's been very rare in history that a major party has come up with a candidate who hasn't held elected office before. Usually the only ones who are exceptions to that are guys who were commanders who won wars. So it's like Ulysses Grant, Dwight Eisenhower, and then everybody else held elected office before they were, put up as candidates or elected to the presidency. And I think there's a good reason for that, which is, when somebody has no political record, they can promise you whatever they like. You can think, boy, he's a really great guy, I like him, which I do like Ben Carson personally. But on the other hand, you don't really know what he's going to do if he's in an executive position, what decisions he's going to make about legislation. You don't have a record against which to test all the promises he's making to you or all the things that seem nice about him. You know what I mean?
Right. Visiting with Robert Tracinski, thefederalist.com, where he's a senior writer. I want to ask you about Scott Walker. Here we have another governor with I would say, a pretty good resume, like you had Rick Perry. Very good resume from Texas. Scott Walker, very good resume, but now he's down at 2%. Do you think that Scott Walker's campaign is in trouble like Rick Perry's was?
Well, I think Scott Walker's campaign is in trouble, and not for the same reason as Rick Perry's. Rick Perry was sort of a victim of circumstance. The way I put it is, after he was an early favorite in the primary 4 years ago, and then wasn't well prepared, wasn't really on his top of his game, made some big flubs, and fell out of the top. And this time around, he spent the last 4 years sort of positioning himself as the serious candidate who really understood the policy issues and had interesting ideas and gave some really good speeches. But the problem is he was the serious adult candidate in a season where people wanted to basically throw a temper tantrum and have a protest candidate. So he was, just like the wrong thing for this cycle. Scott Walker's been hurt by his own decisions, which is the reason he's being talked about on the presidential level is because he took on the unions and won and beat them down in Wisconsin. So he had this reputation as a tough guy who would take strong decisions and make them stick, which is what people are looking for. But then he ran his campaign like he was scared of his own shadow. He was trying to split the difference on too many issues. He had 3 different positions on immigration and birthright citizenship that he stated within 72 hours of each other. He stated 3 different positions. He was being too cautious and timid and acting like he was concerned about the polls and what people would say, which was the exact opposite of what people wanted out of him.
Right.
And I said last week what he really needs to do is show where's the issue where he's going to fight and win on the national level. Now, he actually just did that today with this proposal he just came out with to get rid of the National Labor Relations Board and get rid of government unions on the federal level. So he's basically taking what he did in Wisconsin and doing it on the national level. It is a pretty bold proposal, so it's the direction he needs to go of saying, wait a minute, here is the issue where I am going to stand up for something and fight hard. And I think that's what he needs to regain what people wanted out of him. and also to get some traction in the Trump era.
Visiting with Robert Tracinski. Robert, before I let you go, want to just get what your predictions, what your thoughts are heading into the CNN debate. What do you think we'll see?
Well, I think the big question is going to be Ben Carson, because he, kind of got lost. He had a couple nice moments at the first debate, but there wasn't a lot of attention on him. There's going to be a lot more attention on him now because he is now the second candidate. So it's going to be interesting to see how he's going to go. I expect a lot more airtime, a lot more questions directed at him. It's going to be interesting to see, how his personality comes out, what he has to say on the issues. I think this is going to be, in a lot of ways, the Ben Carson debate. Fiorina also is going to be coming on strong. And then the question is going to be who among the actual experienced people who've been in office, who among those people can then break out and get some attention in the debates. Because I do think ultimately we're going to go with one of those people. I don't think we actually are going to eventually go with an outsider. So we're going to have to figure out who is the person among the people who've held elective office, who is the person who's going to impress people as being tough and strong and willing to fight for the issues that the Republican base wants.
Excuse me, I got choked up there at your answer. Robert Tracinski with thefederalist.com. Great website. Appreciate you coming on today. Always enjoy reading your articles as well, and we encourage people to go to thefederalist.com. Have a good day out there, and hopefully we'll visit again soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me out. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. That's Robert Tracinski, thefederalist.com. Great website.